I was angry. I was angry at God.
Hmm.
And I had this conversation outside of the emergency room one day. How could you? How could you do this to such a sweet, kind kid who's been through so much already? How could you do this to Sovereign? And I was mad. I was angry, and I heard a response, but I gave her the best mom.
Hey, and welcome to today's conversation. I'm your host, Deidre Sirianni, and I am super excited to be diving into today's episode with Michelle Du Sang Johal, who is an amazing woman who is a resilience coach and really is here to help you make stress your bitch. That's the title of her course. That's the title of what she does. She's really an inspiring woman who is here to help you really understand how to be resilient regardless of what's going on in your life right now. And I've also had the pleasure of working with her. She is a client of mine and she is absolutely amazing. This episode is for you if you are navigating chaos or stress in your life, if you are going through loss, if you are someone who has a lot of challenges and you know it's time for you to put yourself first and gain some tools and insights so that you can navigate stress in a healthier way. Let's dive into this week's episode and welcome Michelle to the show. Her story today and what we're going to be diving into is really beautiful. I've had the pleasure of being able to work with her, and I'm so excited for her to share her transformational story as well on here because, for anyone listening that is maybe at a job that you're not feeling super satisfied with anymore, or maybe you love it, but you've outgrown it. Michelle has had a pretty powerful transformation in 7 months, and I just want you to know that at any point when you feel like you can step into the next version of yourself, just giving yourself that permission slip and doing it, it's possible. And Michelle is a perfect example of that. So, Michelle, thank you for being here today.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited to be here, and that was such a kind introduction. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Of course. Yeah, so I would love I love stories. I love teaching all of the things. I would love to hear, personally, I'd love to hear what your story is. I already know your story. We worked on it together. It's
Mhm.
so good, guys. But, storytelling is probably the fastest way to connect with people, but also for people to see like who you really are and why you do what you do. So, would you be able to share your story of like what got you into this work of really wanting to help women and anyone really step into resiliency? And I know for you it's making stress their bitch. That's what Michelle does, and I'd
Mhm.
love for you to share your story with us today.
Oh, I'm happy to. So, Deidre, I'm going to take you to a beach in Maui,
Hmm.
and I'm overlooking the ocean with my sweet 9-year-old daughter, Sabin. And she is wearing her red swimsuit with a black and white stripe. And I look at her and I say, "So, sweetie, I need to talk to you a little bit about autism. It's a huge spectrum, and your brother Avi is somewhere in the middle, but there could be kids who don't talk at all, who are on the lower end of the spectrum. And then there are people who are, could be gifted and super high functioning, like Albert Einstein. Well, you know how we talked to the doctor recently? Well, the doctor said that you have high functioning autism.
Mm-hmm.
And to this day, I will never forget her reply. Oh, I guess I have the good kind then.
I love that.
Right? Yeah, her optimism has always been such a blessing, especially during hard times.
Hmm.
And at 11, she was diagnosed with a very rare health disorder that affects 1 in 2,500 girls. At 15, she had full on open heart surgery. At 11, her brother, already diagnosed with autism, was being diagnosed with an extreme mood disorder. And at 17, she had multiple blood transfusions and she was hospitalized.
Wow.
Yeah. So as you can imagine, there was just some really dark, dark nights, you know,
Hmm.
dark nights of the soul. And somehow I'd managed to pull myself out of it by just thinking of one thing. And that was the love that I have for my children. And this love, it would save me again and again and again. And somehow I'd managed to find my joy again. And I'd managed to find my smile again.
Mm.
But then came December 23rd, 2023, and my sweet, loving daughter, she suddenly became someone else. She was no longer loving. She was no longer kind. It was like one moment she would be raging and throwing things, and then the next she was laughing maniacally and she was trying to eat her cereal bowl. So frightening, it's an understatement,
Yeah,
right?
it sounds like a mother's worst nightmare, one of them.
Oh,
It's like, what's going on with my child here? Like, what's
ab,
who is
ab,
this?
yeah, absolutely. It was an extreme nightmare. And like I'm just gonna, paint you a picture. She was this bright, articulate, A B student, and then suddenly she wasn't even with us.
Mm,
Um, I knew something was terribly wrong. I took her to the hospital, and the neurologist thought that she had a brain, she thought it was a brain infection and delirium. But then she became suicidal, and meds weren't working. And so this would go on for close to a year.
wow, that's a lot. That's a lot to endure.
Yeah, it was a lot. And there came a point when I was angry. I was angry at God.
Hmm.
And I had this conversation outside of the emergency room one day. How could you? How could you do this to such a sweet, kind kid who's been through so much already? How could you do this to Sovereign? And I was mad. I was angry, and I heard a response, but I gave her the best mom. And this moment, it changed everything for me because I remembered what I could control. And I stepped back into my power as a mother, and I was by her side day and night until she finally started to feel better. And today, I'm able to help others who are going through extreme stress, darkness, and chaos in their lives to transform their stress, step into the power, and make stress their bitch.
I love it. You know what's so crazy? The craziest thing about all this, like anyone who's like listening or watching is if you were to meet Michelle, like when I first met Michelle, I think it was like maybe two-ish, maybe 3 years ago when I was speaking at an event. And then I think I was guiding some sort of circle, like transformational thing. Every time I would like look at you or I would see you, and before I knew anything about, you have two autistic children with health issues, that are very demanding. I would have never, ever would have thought that because you just have this grace to you and this way about you that makes you look like life is easy. And so the crazy thing about this is now you're a resilience coach. You're helping women and men and, people who are really like feeling burnt out, stressed out at their wits' end with whatever life circumstance. It could be grief. It could be losing someone. That's really stressful. It could be caring for someone. It could be being in a similar situation to what you're in. It could be so many different things, but it's like, how are you managing your stress? How are you carrying yourself? And you definitely have tools and some sort of magic about you that allows you to give off this energy of, I am peaceful. I am calm. I've got this figured out, even when chaos is happening behind closed doors. So I really admire that about you. And I think you definitely have figured it out. And I'm so excited and happy that you've really stepped into your gifts now of helping other people do this.
Well, I really appreciate your vote of confidence. And, and it's not magic. It is science and research-based strategies that I've been utilizing all along, and I put together in a framework that is FAST, to feel better fast. But before I
Okay.
get into that at all, I just also want to say how much you've helped my evolution, and working with you has been transformative for me as well. And just transformative for my life, and stepping into my purpose and
Mhm.
stepping even further into my power. So I truly attribute a lot of that to you, Deidre.
Thank you so much. I so appreciate it. I just remember we had a call and you were like, I love what I do, but I
Yeah.
meant for something more. I want to get into the science-based stuff in a minute here because I love that I said it was magic. You know, but it's more than that. And I think a lot of the time when we see people, whether that's them stepping into the spotlight, being on podcasts, being on stages, or we see them in a magazine or whatever, whoever it is in our life that we're like, wow, they've got it going on. They must have it so easy. I used to get that projected on me a lot when I have probably my whole life, like, oh, you're so lucky. It's like, actually, I was given a set of cards that made me really have to survive and like learn tools and processes and, bet on myself. And I think that a lot of the time when we see people out in the world, we assume it was all given to them and that things have been easy. And I find the most attractive people, like energetically attractive, like, oh, I'm drawn to them. I want to learn from them. I want to know who they are. Those are the people who have actually been through the darkest times and have come
Right.
out on the other side. So I love that you said it's not magic, even though I'm like, it's like, but like for someone outside would be like,
Right.
wow, she's definitely got something going on. You're like, no, it's science, it's a process, and that's the thing. It's called strategy and actually learning it and implementing it even when you don't feel like it. Because sometimes you're probably like, F this, I don't feel like doing this today. But if I want to feel
Mhm.
better, I probably should.
Yeah, absolutely. And you have to, and it's consistency, right? And
Mm-hmm.
you have to want to take action, and you have to want to do better for yourself. And if you don't do that, then you're never ever going to change, and you're going to stay stuck where you're
Mm-hmm.
at.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of it is just is on you. I mean, for example, you've given me so many strategies for stepping into this coaching sphere. But if I didn't implement those strategies, I will never have transformed as much as I have. So,
Mm-hmm.
and the same goes for strategies for stress, right? They're
Mm-hmm.
out there, but you have to be willing to help yourself.
Right. I think this is, oh, I feel like there's so many different ways we can go with this podcast. Like I'm like here, here, here. Okay. So I would love to get this out of the way for a second. So 7 months ago, you were like, hey, I want to step out of teaching and I want to step into, helping people essentially make stress their bitch. I love that so much, but also you really want to help people. So, what was it? Just because I know some of the listeners right now, because I know who's listening, I know who consumes my content. A lot of the listeners might have a career that they're in that they want to get out of, but they're like, oh, Deidre could do it. She's been an entrepreneur for 15 years. Or, oh, Michelle can do it. Or everyone else can do it, but they're not betting on themselves. They're not going all in. They're not investing in the coach or the program or whatever. What would you say to them? Because that was just 7 months ago. You were working as a teacher and now you're a coach and you're on stages, you're on podcasts, and I really do feel like you are going to be very well known in the next year or two. It takes usually a couple of years of really building momentum with being visible, but people you're getting, you're doing the thing. So I'd love for you just to give a little motivational talk for anyone who's listening on the fence with their purpose or feels a transitional call but isn't taking it and it's like, oh, maybe next year, maybe if it
Mhm.
wasn't so expensive. Like I want that for the
Yeah.
listeners who are not going after their dreams.
Well, yeah, absolutely. You have to stop making excuses, right? I've got a million excuses that I could use. Are you kidding me? Did you hear my story? Right? But you have to stop it. You have to stop making the excuses, and you have to figure it out. figure out your shit, right? If you need to create boundaries, then create those boundaries. I mean, one of my philosophies is that regardless of how difficult things are for my kids, and it gets so difficult at times. I mean, even right now, and I said that I was going to be very authentic. If I'm going to be speaking on podcasts and on stages, I will always be true to myself and my heart and what is going on. And this is one of those difficult times. It's not easy right now, right? Mental health goes up and down. And right now it's my son. Before it was my daughter, you know? So it's constant. But I refuse to be a victim. And that comes with your own, you know, your own choices and your own thought process and taking action. So what I did was the thing that was preventing me from being able to do this work was I had a special needs classroom and I loved it. I absolutely loved it. I loved those kids. I didn't love the fact that there wasn't ever enough resources. I didn't love that there were some people creating extra drama that was not necessary.
Right.
Um, and it was at a point where you know, I just mentioned my daughter had been in the hospital at this point for 2 months and had just gotten out the first time. And then unfortunately, my dad was really ill, and we didn't know how much time he had left at that point, and he did pass away that summer.
Mm.
And I thought to myself, uh, I went to work, and there were, you know, adult women acting like teenage girls and creating so much unnecessary drama. And I thought, okay, what can I control? This is what I can control. I don't have to come into a toxic workplace. I can remove myself from this position. And it was the best thing I did, even though as much as I loved those kids,
Hmm.
I needed to be in a place where I was whole for
Hmm.
my family. And so I just could not put myself, even despite how much I love those kids, in a toxic environment anymore.
Hmm.
And so I walked away and then I took some part-time positions and I even subbed after 20. I'm okay, now I'm going to age myself because I'm pretty up there, 25 years of teaching.
Wow.
And I walked away and that was hard to do because part of me went, oh my gosh, if I am not a classroom teacher, then what the heck am I? Right? It
Hmm.
was like this weird identity lost or shift, and change is uncomfortable,
Right.
so uncomfortable. But you have to do the thing. You just have to do the thing. You have to sit in that discomfort in order to evolve and
Right.
step into, you know, a higher version of who you are.
I
And
I
that's it.
love this. I remember like you weren't sure quite what you wanted to do yet, right? So it's like you stepped out of.
Yes.
So this has to do with resilience too. I know you have a framework. I want to get into it. And I also
Mhm.
just want to address this. Like, for example, in our entranceway, downstairs of the place that we live, I had these I don't know what type of plants there, but they hang and they're really beautiful. They're like kind of like ivy looking and they kind of drape.
Mhm.
And I love plants. And so we had them downstairs in the entrance of our home. And I put them there. And when I first got them, they were great. And then I realized when I water them every Saturday, I was like, oh, this plant's not really doing well here. And then I look at the little tag and it says it needs part sunlight. I'm like, well, we actually don't really have any light, direct light in that entrance because of where the door is and then where that shelf is. So I was like, oh, I'm going to bring it upstairs and I'm going to put it in kind of our living room area so it gets some sunlight. Okay, so all of these dead leaves fall off, like a whole vine falls off within a day. And then just 3 days later, all of these new parts have grown. And I remember showing my partner and being like, hey, this is a perfect example of when you're in the wrong environment, parts of you die, you feel restricted, contracted, you feel sick, you don't feel like yourself, you can't grow. And then in 3 days, this plant is growing into something completely new because it has what it needs. And so, what you're articulating here, we are talking about resilience, we're talking about alignment, going after our dreams. So many different things are going to come up in this conversation. Mental health. You were in an environment where you're like, yeah, this isn't serving me, and I'm not going to be the person I want to be inside this environment. And that has to do with like, you know, resilience, is it not? Like, I'd love to hear if, your perspective on environment
Yeah,
shifts.
absolutely. Because creating boundaries, that's a huge part of resilience, right? Protecting your own energy. And you can't do that unless you find some form of self-love in order to create those boundaries, right? And then that's when you start to make that shift. It absolutely has everything to do with resilience. I knew that in that moment, you know, that something was going to break and it couldn't be me.
Mm,
It could not be me. I'm too valuable to these kids, right?
mm-hmm,
And I do struggle sometimes even putting myself on equal level as the care that I give to my children, but I'm more and more realizing how important it is to give myself an equal amount of love and care that I give to my children. I'm still working on it, but
mm-hmm,
I'm realizing that that's not selfish, right? That's just there's a difference between a narcissistic kind of self-love that comes from ego, and there's a difference with the love where you're just trying to make yourself an equal to everyone else. Because I feel like women, we give so much and we need to create these boundaries for resilience. We just do so that we can be stronger and better, you know?
mm-hmm,
Women just give and give and give and think that that's what we're supposed to do. And then we're depleted. And then we're no good for others, let alone ourselves. And so, yeah, sorry, I went off on a bit of a tangent there, but
Oh, yeah. Don't apologize. Yeah. So boundaries are huge. Let's share a little bit about your framework. So you left the job. You're like, this isn't serving me. I really do feel like it was your soul getting you into alignment with what you're really here to do. Because I remember the very first time we spoke, I'm like, oh, you're supposed to be a leader in this space. And you kind of felt it, but you're kind of like, oh, I don't know yet. And then you just kind of, you went for it. But I feel like our soul and the universe and God will take us into radical alignment, which is the name of my company, Radically Align, when we are out of alignment. And it will come through pain, it will come through disconnection, it will come through other people as a mirror of like, oh, something needs to change. It will come as like losing your job suddenly, whatever the thing is. So I love that you had that realignment. And also, I just want to share one more thing that came up, because there's so much juiciness in everything you shared so far. You said you were refusing to be a victim. Okay. A lot of women, okay, and I've been here before, so I'm not like counting myself out like I've got it all together, but we are a victim. We'll put ourselves as a victim to men. Oh, well, this is the relationship I'm in, or this is the situation I'm in, or whatever. We'll be a victim to our external reality versus actually taking accountability and making necessary changes. And I think that moms do that. Like, we always have excuses and reasons to not show up for ourselves. So, how do you get yourself out of victim? Or what would you recommend to any listeners who are like, oh my gosh, I'm such a victim right now in my relationship, either with my partner or with my family or my circumstances? What is like a little motivational kick in the ass you would give someone, Michelle, who's stuck in victim mentality and they need a little wake up call?
Well, I mean, it's a choice, right? It's a choice. Uh, if you want to stay stuck in victimhood and make yourself a victim, then you're not going to be able to rise above it. And so part of my framework is to learn to accept and surrender to the things that we cannot change.
Mm-hmm.
So what I find is that the people who are suffering are the ones who can't, who aren't accepting the things that you can't change. And so they're stuck in resistance. And
Mm-hmm.
when we're stuck in that resistance, that's where the suffering is. And that's kind of victim mentality too,
Right.
right?
So we're stuck in the pattern of we're resisting the change or we're resisting what's happening. How are
Mhm.
some of the ways that we do this? Like, what are some of the ways that that would show up as far as like a day-to-day basis of resisting something and not accepting it? Like, could you give us an example of maybe how you did it or something that you've heard from clients that you work with?
Yeah, I mean, I used strategies like surrender through meditation,
Mm-hmm.
right? That's a really good question, but my framework provides a lot of different strategies like grounding yourself in the present moment,
Mm-hmm.
uh, which allows you to kind of start letting go of the past and just accepting where you're at.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but sorry, can you
Yeah,
repeat
so I love
that?
that you're sharing that meditation's really helpful. What are some of the signs or symptoms or ways that we don't accept our reality? Like what is like a potentially a conversation that a listener or someone might be having right now
Mhm.
around like they're not accepting? Like what is an internal dialogue or something that could be going on?
Yeah, I can give you an example through so my time as a special needs teacher. What I was realizing was a lot of the parents were causing their own suffering because they were not accepting where their child was at. And they were constantly comparing their special needs child to a neurotypical one
Right.
and saying, but they're not there. They're not there. Guess what? They might never get there. You have to accept where they're at and that yes, they can grow, but they're going to grow, from the place that they're at, which might not necessarily be, where that neurotypical child is. If I was sitting here constantly saying to myself, "Oh, my son's not going to graduate, high school with a dogwood. He's not going to graduate. He's not going to graduate." I'm going to be causing unnecessary suffering for myself. And the moment that parent lets go of those expectations of their child being something that they're never going to be, there's a huge release, a
Mm-hmm.
huge release with this acceptance. And then you can take the energy that you do, have that you were using up in that resistance, and you can use it for productive things. You can because there are things you can do to help your children,
Mm-hmm.
but you also have to accept their
Mm-hmm.
baseline and where they're starting.
Totally. And I think this is so relevant for anyone that's listening, whether they have a child who's going through a disability or, autism or challenges. It's like, where are you not accepting something in your life, either about yourself or a dynamic that you're in? And I'll give a personal example of something I had to come really into acceptance with. So about 2 or maybe 3 years ago. I moved back to Vancouver for only 2 years. So basically I was traveling the world and then the whole COVID thing happened, came back to Canada, was in Vancouver, and I was like, I don't want to stay in Vancouver. So I moved to more Okanagan area for a year and a bit to be closer to family. And then I felt the call to come back to Vancouver. And I remember unpacking into my apartment, my small apartment that I was like, this, I'm going to be here. It's great, all the things. And as soon as I unpacked one of my boxes, I think it was like my first box, my soul said, this is temporary. And I was pissed because I was tired of traveling. I was tired of not feeling grounded. And I was kind of in denial about that. Like, no, I'm not moving again. Of course, I've moved since, right? Moved cross country. But, our intuition will tell us things, and not just our intuition, our life will show us things that we might be in resistance to. And I didn't want to accept that. But also, I had a bit of an identity shift when I came back to Vancouver. An old group of friends, like a couple old group of friends, I was not in resonance with. They did not have aligned values. And part of me wanted to be the old version of me who had that group of friends, but I had outgrown it. So I had to come into acceptance around I
Mm.
actually don't want to spend time with those people anymore. And I'm not the person I used to be anymore. And I have to accept it and I have to grieve it and I have to let it go so that I can find my new soul path and my new family of soul friends, soul family, all the things. And that was really hard. So it's like, it could be anything. It could be accepting that you personally have a disability or you have ADD or something's going on with a family
Sure.
member. It could be so many different things. So I
Yeah.
love that.
And yeah, I love that example as well. Yeah, and it can be just accepting that, we want healing to be an upward journey. And it's not like that life is up and down, and then you have to pull out those strategies again. And it's just can also just be an accepting and a surrendering to that, right? I was just having this conversation with you on Monday
Hmm.
that I just wish I was there already. I wish I was there with these kids, right? My number one goal in life is to make sure that they're as happy and as healthy and functioning as well as they possibly can be. And we're just not, 100% there yet. But I need to just like accept
Hmm.
that is the journey for us.
Hmm.
And that's life, right?
Hmm.
Life is going to be up and down. And then you're going to have these moments where you're feeling like down again and you're going, oh crap. Now I have to pull out my strategies again, right? So
Hmm.
yeah, acceptance can look like so many different things, but suffering is in the resistance.
Oh, for sure. I love that. So, okay, so it's called FAST, right? Is that
Mhm.
what it is? So tell us
Yeah.
what each of these stand for and the process of stepping into deeper resilience. Take us through your process.
Yeah, I'll take you through my framework. So it's to feel better fast in order to make stress your bitch. And the F is to feel. Okay. Uh, so often when we're not in acceptance, we deny our feelings, we push them down, and this can become illness in our body. And so many research studies have shown that, right?
Mhm.
Especially like especially women and anger. Can we talk about that for a moment? Oh, women aren't
Oh,
supposed to be
yes.
angry. We don't want to look like an angry bitch, right?
Oh no, it's so, I love that you just brought up anger because like authentically, I never really gave myself permission to feel
Mm,
anger my whole life until maybe like a few years ago. And
right.
I would go to kickboxing and I would beat the
Oh
shit
my
out
gosh.
of I would crush it. And honestly, sometimes I'd imagine a couple people's faces who really hurt me in the past, but I'm a nonviolent person.
Yes.
But in boxing, in my mind, it helped me process anger, and I
Okay.
think it's okay.
I love that you just said that because guess what my tool is for processing anger?
What is it? Same thing?
Kickboxing. Yes. I
Kickboxing.
started
Oh
about
my
a
gosh.
year ago and I'm the same way. I'm usually very calm, usually patient. I do, get my sometimes get a little bit ruffled or whatever, but
Right, you're human.
yeah, yeah, but I'm usually calm. And so, but I figured I better not be repressing some of my anger. I'm sure it's in there somewhere. And so I started kickboxing.
Nice.
And so yeah, sometimes it's someone's face, or sometimes other times it's just the shit that's happened in life.
Hmm.
You
Yeah.
know, it's like the health and the mental health and all the stuff that we had to deal with and the things that we had to deal with my dad and it was cathartic,
Hmm.
being able to express something that I didn't even realize I was repressing. And I think it's so healing and so important for women to find healthy ways to express that anger because otherwise it's going to become illness. 80%, right? Dr. Gabor Mate talks about how 80% of autoimmune sufferers are women.
Totally.
That. sink in.
And autoimmune is your body essentially attacking itself and over producing it's over your autoimmune system your immune system is thinking that everything's a threat, like
Mm,
it's on
alert.
hyper alert. Actually, we talked about this in the podcast episode that came out the day that we're recording it, with the different immune system protocols and all those things with the past
Yeah.
guest. But
Yeah.
it's pretty well because it's your body attacking itself. And I think that, what I noticed with anger, because I never gave myself permission to have anger, I was always the super nice girl, put myself last. I still fall into that a lot, but I've evolved a lot. Is feeling the anger is such a good way to let it out. But for so long, I didn't. And then it turned into
Mm.
depression because what
Oh,
happens is unexpressed anger turns into anger towards self. So instead of accepting that potentially someone violated a boundary or hurt us, anger is always hurt underneath. Like that's what it is. But if we don't process that in an effective way, it turns into self anger. I don't want to feel this way. So instead of doing this, we do this. And
yeah.
then it turns into depression. Whereas this could just be like some kickboxing and some
Hmm.
boundaries, like gentle boundaries, but also clear boundaries. It turns
Hmm.
into depression. So I love that you
Oh
brought that up.
gosh. Yeah, yeah. And thank you for that example. Yeah, it's so true. So important to learn to
Mhm.
feel and express for our health, right? Um,
Mhm. Okay,
so
so boxing, what are some other tools and ways that you would recommend processing emotions? And anger is something that we've like villainized it. We're like, oh, if someone's
yeah,
angry, we're like, oh,
right,
they're crazy, they're out of control. Maybe
right,
they're in a situation that is just so not okay that they had
right.
to have
Yeah.
like be angry. You know what I mean?
I
Like,
think yeah, we need to normalize feelings.
yeah,
We're
big
human
feelings.
beings, right? And we're here to be human. And being
Mhm.
human means that we're not always going to be positive and happy all the time,
Mhm.
right? And so I think we need to allow these feelings. And it's interesting because I would say to kids when I was teaching social and emotional learning, is it okay to be angry? And they'd go, nope. And I'd be like, oh no, what are we teaching these kids, right? And then I would say, it's always okay to be angry. It's just not okay to be unkind,
Mm.
right? So we need to find ways to make it okay to feel angry and then, let it out in really healthy ways, like whether that's kickboxing, whether that's exercising, whether that's one time, okay, I'm going to tell you a story. One time I took out my anger on a toilet paper roll
Oh.
and I just like, yeah, I just like flung that toilet paper around. I felt so much better. And did I hurt anyone? No.
Yeah, that's so good. I remember an ex-boyfriend. This is like, I don't know, probably 15 years ago. It was definitely 16 or 17 years ago. It was when I was in university. And I did this whole paper when I was in broadcasting, and it was like an end of year something, okay, or end of term something. It meant a lot. My computer, like it vanished, and I just finished.
Oh,
And I think it was like one of the most challenging classes for me. And my boyfriend at the time was visiting, and he wrapped himself in pillows and scarves, and he's like, beat me up, D, beat me up. And I was like, I couldn't even because I was like so unfamiliar with it. So I like kind of tried to like beat him up with like the pillows, and I think I ended up just laughing about it, but he's like, let it out. And I couldn't even because I couldn't access that anger. So it's interesting.
right. I love that. That's fantastic. Good for him.
Yeah, I mean, that's funny. Okay, so the first is to feel. So we have to feel whatever we're going through so that we can move it out of us and not hold on
Yes.
to it.
Yeah.
And then
And not get stuck there. We have to be careful not to get stuck and wound worship
wound
or
worship.
yeah, where or victim mentality, right? We don't want to get stuck there. We want to feel it, we want to let it go, and then we want to realize when it's time to move on. And the accepting and the surrendering, that's the A and the S part of the framework we've already talked a little bit about that and I already spoke to it a bit. But the hardest thing I had to accept was when my daughter was getting suicidal during her psychosis.
Mm,
That was a really tough thing to accept as a mother. And it was about the third time we were back in the emergency room because, we were in and out and in and out. And at this point, her um, IBD was also acting up. I didn't know again if I was going to lose her. She was suicidal and she kept trying to run away. And they had her in these restraints. And somehow this kid who was usually gentle and so gentle and soft, she was like becoming Houdini and ripping herself out of these restraints and trying to run away. I mean, funny in retrospect,
yeah,
but
not
they
at
had
the time.
yeah, at the time it was a nightmare. Um, so they had to put her in this cell-like room. So we're in this room, cold concrete walls, one mattress on the floor, steel toilet.
Wow.
And
Sounds like
yeah,
prison.
it felt like prison. It felt
Hmm.
like prison. And so she's in this room, and you know, uh, I was lucky that I could stay with her. And so my saving grace was when I was with her, we could have like an iPad or a book or something with us. Otherwise, she wasn't allowed anything. And otherwise, the door would be closed, but they would leave it open if I was with her. So
Hmm.
that was, my saving grace. But there came a moment where she was lying there on the mattress and I surrendered it all. It was like the absolute worst hour of our lives. And I thought to myself, no, actually, I had another conversation with God. And I said out loud, okay, God, I guess if this is what you have given us, then it's what we're going to have to deal with. And I surrendered it and I sat there. And I actually repressed this memory for so long and it came back to me several months ago. But I sat there next to her and I just meditated. And somehow, in this acceptance, there was a moment of peace in our worst hour, right? And I thought to myself, if I can find peace in this situation, then people can find peace anywhere, you know.
I
And
just
that
got
is the
goosebumps.
power. Yeah, that's the
Hmm.
power of accepting and surrendering to that which you cannot change. And it also gives you the energy then to refocus on the things that you can change, right?
Hmm. Hmm. Powerful. And so what is tea?
And the T is to transform with your mindset and using gifts. I think everyone has gifts.
Hmm.
But the power of the mind, I mean, we've talked a little bit about it already with not falling into victim mindset and how that is a choice, right? But the mind is such a powerful, powerful tool. I mean, people like Cyril Madani and Robin Sharma have talked about how the mind is not your master, it is your servant.
Hmm.
But if you allow it to run you, it will run you with, a negative stories, victim mindset. You have to be the one who takes control of it.
Hmm.
Yeah. And
Powerful.
thank you. Yeah, I mean, but a lot of people have already, tuned into the power of the mind. People like I'm actually just recently getting into the work of Dr. Joe Dispenza,
Mm,
and he's also super amazing. And he talks about how research studies have shown, and he's done these research studies, that thoughts can make you sick,
of course.
but thoughts can also make you well. Right? And I think you already know the power of that because I remember sitting there with you in one of our classes in one of our sessions and talking about some of the things that were happening that were difficult. And you said to me, but what if things could get easier? And Deidre, it was such a powerful statement that I just felt this huge release like off of my shoulders. And even to this day, when things get hard, I never give up on that hope, right?
Mm-hmm.
And never, and three things that have anchored me besides the love that I have for my kids, which I talked about already through my dark times, hope and faith, right? And that
Mm-hmm.
is the power of using your mindset to transform any situation.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting. Earlier you were talking about, I mean, you mentioned a couple times you had a conversation with God.
Mm.
I used to never talk about God. I mean,
Mm.
I remember coming down to earth. I know what my mission is. I know who I'm here to serve. Like I've had very direct experiences with God, the divine, angels. Like I've, been saved, like caught by angels when I was in an accident years and years ago. Um, so I'm very connected, I feel, with God and spirituality. It's who I am.
Mm.
But for a long time, I think without getting too much into the story, because this is involves somebody else, but someone close to me when I was growing up had, tried to commit suicide and had a really bad addiction. So I was basically at a young age. I remember being in Bali probably 5 or 6 years ago. And that's when I started to really have a lot of direct experiences with God and the divine. And I realized that I stopped believing in God at a young age because I had so much trauma in
Oh.
my childhood with this
Mm.
dynamic of this person that I was close to. That's when I kind of was like, God's not real. And so I think that a lot of the time when we're going through something challenging, whether it's, happened when we were a child or we had a trauma because of church or a religion or a person, that we're like, oh, well, God's not real. I don't believe in XYZ. And I think I did that until I was about 19 or 20 when I woke up to my spiritual gifts. And then again, like, 6 years, 7 years ago, when I really started to have really intense experiences. But I think that a lot of people stop believing in God or are afraid of God. They'll say
Mhm.
universe or something instead because the word God is so triggering. And I think that I truly believe that I know I'm here to help people wake up to who they are, like their true identity, and like, bring their message to the world. And I'm also here to help them bring their message to the world and light up the world through their gifts. Like with what you do, like
Mhm.
you're doing such amazing work, but that's not what I do. Like we all do different things. And
Mhm.
I know that God's assignment in so many ways is our whatever we're going through is essentially the ground of our school that we need to
Mhm.
learn through so that we can really be of service to humanity. So what you're going through has helped you evolve and given you tools and experiences that otherwise you wouldn't have had. And because of that, now you're able to help so many people be more resilient and do great work. And so the word God specifically, I used to never say it. I
Mhm.
used to have so much resistance to it. And I'm like, yeah, God's real, but God has given you specific challenges to help you receive certain gifts if you're willing to say yes to the assignment and if you're willing to essentially heal the trauma and find the
Mhm.
gift on the other side. So I love that you shared those moments because I think a lot of people resist saying God or putting it out there because fear that it's going to trigger people. But to me, it's just, oh, God's real. And you
Yeah.
either know or you don't know. And if you know, you've had a direct experience, right? And that's really beautiful that you have.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. I mean, I can only speak my truth, and God is part of that truth. And that doesn't mean that I haven't been like talked about how angry I was at points
Yeah.
with God. Like, what are you thinking?
Yeah.
Why so much, right?
You're like, why?
So I'm honest about all of that, but I think also that God can handle that. So it's okay. It's okay if I'm angry with God.
Yeah. Yeah. And
Yeah.
I do feel like we have like we've agreed to a lot of this stuff before we came here, and
I
different
agree.
dimension, different time, and it's like, oh, okay, I'm playing this out. I'm playing this
Mhm.
out.
Yeah,
And yeah, go ahead.
yeah, no, I agree with that. I do think that some of this was agreed upon, and it's not something I talk about often, but um, with my own soul contract, with my own higher self and God. But sometimes I think um, maybe my higher self shouldn't have agreed to so much. Maybe I need to be having a conversation with my higher self. Like, what the
You're
heck are you thinking?
yeah, yeah,
Signing this contract.
your spiritual self before coming here was like, oh, that sounds like the most interesting. Yeah, I'm gonna
Yeah.
choose that. I feel like I had that too. I was like, oh, I need to be really evolved and help a lot of people, and I need to have certain gifts. Oh, that sounds fun. I'll do that. I'll do that.
Mhm.
And it's interesting that you say you're talking a little bit about dis-ease in the body. Um, and then we'll start to wrap up the conversation. But I find whenever I'm not listening to my soul, and like I studied with my very first shaman, like, I don't know, 15 years ago, and like, did a lot of this healing work and all of that that I got into. But the soul, I believe, will kill you if you don't listen to it. And it will kill you
Mm.
through essentially you feeling depressed, angry, disconnected, all of those things. And it's like when we don't listen to the call of our soul, we think we're confused. We think that what we want isn't for us. We think it's for everyone else. We make things harder than they need to be. We don't, feel, we don't accept, we don't surrender, we don't, you know, transform or trust that this is for us. And we make things a lot harder. But, you know, 8, 9 years ago, I got a very clear message from my soul that if I didn't change my life, I was going to get cancer and die in a year. And I know that to be true. So for me, dis-ease comes up when I'm not listening to my
Mm.
direction of where I'm meant to be. And that's usually because I am suppressing and not accepting something that I need
Mm.
to accept as like, this is the next step. And so I wanted to
Mhm.
bring that up just in case that's relevant for anyone that's listening, because knowing that and getting that has transformed my life in such a powerful way.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is powerful. Thank you. Yeah, the power of accepting our sole purpose, right?
Yeah.
It's
And
what
it
we're here for.
evolves, right? It's not
Hmm.
stagnant. Like, it's always evolving. And I think we can give ourselves permission to evolve, which you've done. So, as we start to kind of wrap up the episode, I'm sure we could talk for like another hour easy. I love Michelle. Michelle, you're amazing. Um, I'd love for you to share. Is there any like a last message you'd like to share with the listeners today? Maybe to sum it up or something else that we just didn't cover yet?
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, I'm just going to reiterate something I've already said. But first of all, I love you too, Deidre. And I love working with you. And thank you so much for having me on this. It's been such a pleasure. But one last thing I would reiterate is if you are finding yourself in a really, really dark time right now, please find yourself an anchor, right? Just find yourself an anchor because when we're going through a really dark time, it feels like you're on a boat or you're in a boat and it's sprung leaks and all you can do is basically stay afloat. And you're doing everything you can to stay afloat, right? And so stay afloat. And you do that by finding an anchor, whether that is love, whether that is hope, whether that is faith. But don't let that darkness pull you under. And, this too will pass and things will get easier.
I love
Mhm.
that. Thank you so much for being here. So, Michelle, how can people connect with you? What is the best way for people to connect with you and work with you?
Yeah, so I am on Instagram at Mindful Warriors Way, as well as Mothers of Mental Health. And they can also find me on Kajabi, Mindful Warriors Way Kajabi. If they just Google that, they'll find my website and my email address and everything is on the website.
Amazing. So we'll drop all of that information below. Michelle, thank you so much for being here. Love you so much. And if you're listening to this episode right now and you're like, oh my gosh, this is amazing, I need her support, make sure to reach out to her and get into her programs, have a call with her. She's lovely. She has great resources and she goes a lot deeper into her fast method where you can really embody it and practice in your life and see actionable change. And if you've liked today's episode and you've been getting value from our episodes so far, please share it. Share this episode with someone who needs to hear it, someone who's going through a hard time. And if you haven't already, please go ahead and leave a review on whatever platform you're listening from. Big love. Mwah.